Hello and welcome back to Project Spark, welcome back to Let's Build a World. Today we're actually starting a new area in the world here. We're going to be making a farm. I call it a farm, it's more of a, well, I don't know what you'd call it. They grow flowers here as opposed to having animals or anything like that, or growing crops. It's just a big field of flowers. There's going to be a windmill, there's going to be a farmhouse, there's loads of fences around it, which we're doing right now, and I actually think it turned out really nice. I was sort of doubting the build halfway through, and I was looking at it going, maybe I should not do this, and maybe I should just do more shops and houses and stuff over here, but by the end, I think I added a little bit of detail here and there. I changed things up a little bit. I went a little bit further with the windows than what I usually do. I added a couple more windows to the buildings than I usually would. And I think it turned out really good. I think the addition of the windmill in the field, which you will see in a little bit, I think everything eventually comes together to create this really nice farm. Now what we're doing here obviously is laying out the fences that will border the farm. There wasn't really a pattern to this as such, it was just kind of make it go in a nice area. I'm looking at this section here and thinking I maybe should have just bordered off the fence with that bit of cliff that's sticking out there as opposed to taking the fence into this cove here, but I think it looks nice regardless, although I may go back and change that at some point in the future, I don't know. That'll be before the world gets released anyway. What we're doing here, of course, is now going in and adding some path. I'm doing something here that I did with the docks area. I'm sort of using the sandy texture to create a path that is not so much planned, it's just been worn into the earth because people have walked up and down here so often. I also decided that it might be a good idea to put a little bit of sand under these fences just to give that little bit of detail, to make it look like maybe someone walks along the fence, or the fences aren't all that old or something like that, just to give it a little bit of just something to look a little bit nicer. Now what we're going to do next is start working on the farmhouse, or at least that'll come very soon. The farmhouse, I really wasn't sure how to do it, because I didn't want to use the rustic hall again. We are just adding in a post here that'll eventually have a light on it. It doesn't in this episode, but again, I've actually decided that lighting is something we'll be doing as a kind of one of the last episodes of this will be lighting. I don't see much point in going in and doing lighting now when I might change things up a little bit later on. Anyway, back to the farmhouse. We do end up using a rustic hall, but I didn't want to begin with, because I find myself using this all the time, but really the rustic hall is kind of the only large structure that kind of works as a house or whatever you really want it to be. I mean, you can add some dormers like this to the top of it, and you can change the door a little bit, and you can add some windows and some towers to it, but I don't know, it annoys me that I keep using the rustic hall, but I think in this particular situation it actually does work quite nicely. I think having the dormer there and the added little bit of thatched roof to it there just makes it look really nice and homely and kind of like a farmhouse. And I think the fact that it's kind of sitting down there in a corner, not exactly straight onto the fence, it is at a bit of an angle, I think it just works and it looks kind of nice. And as much as I disagree with using the rustic hall for everything, I think in this particular situation I can get away with it because it certainly seems to have worked. We also added an outhouse there, which is of course something you always need on a farm, because we all know farmhouses don't have toilets, right? Yeah? We're gonna go with that? Yeah, we'll go with that. I don't know, I just thought it looked kind of nice and it fitted and it was good, and I just liked filling that little bit of space with an outhouse there. Also using the rounder door here. Now I wasn't sure about that, but I think in the end, again, it works. It kind of gives the whole farmhouse, and the farmhouse by the end does have this look of, it's not exactly the most perfect building, but it has that one word that I keep using, character. It definitely has character. Those windows there, of course, being ones that I've mentioned in past episodes that I absolutely loathe, but I actually think they worked really well on this. Again, we come back to the C word. it gives it character. I think a farmhouse isn't a farmhouse unless it has planters beneath the windows, and this one actually does have planters beneath the windows. What we're going to go ahead and do now is add in 2 more windows using these little rounded ones here, just putting them on an angle to make them look a little bit weird and a little bit kind of like, oh, we don't care that our windows aren't straight. I don't know, I really love those 2 middle windows. I think the fact that they look like they're lit up just looks really nice, and it makes things look interesting and kind of weird. And I don't want to use the word mysterious because this isn't a mysterious farmhouse, but it does make it look a little bit mysterious, to be honest. It does make it a little bit weird. Anyway, what we're going ahead and doing now is actually adding some plants into the planters, and I was determined to use this one. And I don't know why I was determined to use this one, but I was determined to use that plant. And it took me a little bit longer than I care to admit to actually get that to sit right. I'm still kind of not happy with how it wound up sitting. I think it still looks a bit weird, but in the end we had 2 different plants in it. We eventually go ahead and put those plants in the ground around the house as well, just a little bit. Just kind of around the outhouse and the door to the house, because the rest of the area will very soon be getting turned into a field of flowers as opposed to just the grass there. But I think this is something I need to go back and do to the entire world, the entire town area at some point. I do need to go back and add some vegetation in and get some plants on the go and actually make it look like a living world, not just in terms of people living there, but flowers and stuff like that. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead here and actually select what the terrain's gonna be here. We're gonna go with, of course, the yellow wildflowers there, because I think they just look really nice. I was considering, and I'm still considering, changing this to the red wildflower because it gives a much nicer glow off the ground and onto your character. And it might look a bit better because red sort of clashes with green, so it would definitely make the area look completely different to the rest of the world, because this still has that very kind of natural feel to it, whereas red on the ground in terms of flowers, a big field of red flowers, will feel significantly different when you walk through it to the rest of the world. Maybe that's just me, but it's definitely something I'm considering. Now right here I was just testing things out with the wild, or whatever, the woodland moss there, because I wanted to see what that was, and I thought I could maybe use it on the path here to add a little bit of detail, and I do like it. I just don't think it works here, so I went and tied it up again, and we do eventually change the path down to the farmhouse from being that sandy stuff to being the kind of with the autumny kind of leaves on the ground texture that also comes with the woodland theme biome paint thing. Anyway, right here, this is the start of the windmill. Now originally this was going to be about this height. It was going to be a very short windmill, but I realized I kind of wanted it to be taller. I didn't want it to be this stumpy little thing that didn't really have much height to it and didn't really look all that impressive, so eventually we did go ahead and add another tower thing on top of it, quite literally the rustic tower. And I mean, while that looked good, I did like that the windmill was quite short. I thought it looked okay. It definitely needed to be taller, not tower. It needed to be taller just to bring a bit of contrast to the rest of the world, and I was going to put the blades of the windmill on that side, but I realized they're kind of hidden. So I started toying around with the idea of having maybe 2 blades on it, or 2 sets of blades, but then I settled on having them on this side, so that you can sort of see them from all angles, and they'll look really good when they're up there spinning and moving about and doing their windmill thing. I'd also considered using this bit of thatched roof to maybe hide the fact that this tower was just concrete at the bottom, as opposed to actually coming out of the thatched roof that was there, and that sort of worked right there, but not all that much, and I could never really get this to sit right, so I end up giving up on the idea of having the second bit of roof there to hide the fact that that tower just comes out of the roof in a really ugly way. I'll probably go back at some point and find a way to do that. I'm really not happy with how that looks in terms of blending the cupola and the tower together, but in the meantime, it shall do. Of course, we need to go ahead and add some windows to the tower as well. We do the same thing that we did in the farmhouse, and we use these round windows on an angle, which I think just looks... I don't know what it is. I think it looks rustic, honestly. I think that's the best word to use. It looks like it's kind of falling apart, but somehow staying together. I'm trying to think. It's some Tim Burton movie, I think it was. Was it a series of unfortunate events or something like that? There were a lot of places in that movie looked like they were falling apart. I think it was that movie. It was the one with Jim Carrey. I think it was... I do think it was a series of unfortunate events, that movie with Jim Carrey as the Count Olaf, I think was his name. I'm pretty sure it was that movie. It reminds me a lot of that, and I love that movie to bits. It's a really good movie, and everything looks like it's falling apart and kind of coming apart at the seams, but somehow staying together, and it's this really idealized world in places, and then in other places it's kind of weird and not all that pleasant, and I'm kind of taking the idealized part of that world and applying it to Project Spark and creating this really, really pleasant yet somehow falling apart world right here, and that's kind of what I want to keep doing with this. I want to have this world that looks friendly and appealing, but like it's going to collapse at any second because the build quality is so bloody shoddy. Maybe it's just me, but I do love how this is all coming together, and I think it does look really good in the end, and I want to come back to what I said at the beginning about the farm not being me not being all that happy with it, but because I am happy with it now. It definitely looks better than what I planned, and I'm happy that it looks better than what I planned. I'm kind of glad I don't need to go back and fill in this area with loads of houses, because I don't think that's what this world needs. I think this world will probably be one of those weird ones you play in games where you look at it and go, there's way too many people here and barely any houses, where do they all stay? It's definitely going to be a case of that, but I'm actually okay with that, because it's not meant to be realistic. It's meant to be fun and pleasant and silly, and in the end, that's kind of what it is, and I really like how it turns out, and I think the farm is a nice addition to everything, and yeah, I'm really happy with it. Again, using these two circular windows just add a little bit of something to the build there. We of course have the entranceway needing a path going up to it here, using the same old texture there, the sandy thing, and going around with the stone just to make it look like there's a bit of foundation here. We are also going to have to build a platform up to that door because it doesn't quite sit right, but that's fine. That is completely fine. We can get a platform up to that door. Again, I think this is just a little something that actually looks kind of nice. I was originally considering having the slope go straight up to the door, but I decided against it and thought maybe we can use a pillar to make a kind of platform thing here, but it didn't really work. And you'll see we do go back to something we've done before. We get ourselves the good old and reliable rustic table, and we turn it into a bit of a platform. I think we used this down on the jetty, didn't we? And it looked pretty damn good. I've also used this in several worlds and live streams and stuff like that, so I don't know. I think it looked really good. Now this is the point where I was considering changing the path, and I do go ahead and do that. We use the kind of foresty floor texture right here, and it doesn't change all that much. It just makes it look like maybe this path, or, well, what I want it to look like. It looks like the path wasn't planned, it wasn't something intentional, it's just that people walk that way and have trampled the ground into the ground. Anyway, folks, that's going to be all for this episode of Let's Build a World. This is the farm right here. Thank you very much for watching. I've been the ConflictNerd, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.